Hello. Now, I know how to do this now, like Sahara, Tamara. Is that right? Because no, Tamara, Sahara. Oh, I can't get it right. Like the sun will come out, Tamara. That am I close? TJ. Oh, I can call you TJ. They're my initials, TJ, Tracy Jane. Sahara, 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 Tamara, 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 or TJ. I can remember TJ as well. I was working with two other Tracys, my actual name Tracy, and we had to try and do something to unconfuse the situation, because whenever anyone would say Tracy, all three of us would turn around where I worked at the hospital when I was a student nurse. So that was all good fun. Tamara, TJ, Tamara. I do try and get people's names right because it's just, it's just showing good manners and respect. And I think those are good qualities to have. So it's just you and me at the moment, Tamara, and I'm not sure how much interest you're going to have in the UK far right, or far enough right, quite a lot right, let's say, political party. Oh, I had it right the first time I said it. Oh, and I've just gone off on various tangents ever since then. Bill, welcome. Come in, join myself and Tamara, Sahara, Tamara. Oh, thank you, Tamara. Yeah, so tonight normally we're quite US focused, and we try and have a look at the impact the United States is having on the rest of the world. Hey, Jan. Oh, thank you. You such lovely people, aren't you? I love learning about stuff, and I know a little bit about a lot. I'm jack of all trades, master of none. And thank you. Thank you, Tamara. I like to learn. I like to know more. If I know a little bit about something and I try to tell somebody about it and I realize there are big knowledge gaps, I'm like, right, okay, let's go and learn a little bit more about that. And whoops, we have got some elections coming up in the UK. And once we've got a couple more people in, I'll explain how the elections work in the UK. And then we can get started. And, watching what's going on in the US gives me quite a wide-eyed perspective as to where we're heading. Because the old adage even, America sneezes and the UK catches cold, didn't come into existence for no reason. If you've got it, we'll get it. Thank you, Tamara. I thought he did a really good job, and I was very vocal about him not going. I did not want him to go. I was basically, you go and we are through. I'm not a staunch monarchist. I'm not a staunch Republican. I don't mind. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If enough people don't like it, then maybe we should fix it. That's kind of where I am. I don't have a strong case to either maintain the royal family or to develop the royal family into something more symbolic, ceremonial, less head of statey. So none of my business. The ones apart from the one we do not mention, the arsehole formerly known as Prince, um, they do a pretty good job, and some of them seem to work really hard, and I respect that. And in some countries around the world, they're still seen as, good earning potential for brand UK. But I think increasingly, as we become more socially aware and our social consciences expand, I just feel like any structure that says these people are the most important because they were born to these other people, and you people who, through no fault of your own, just misfortune of who your parents were, you're worth considerably less. I just have got to a place in my life at age 50 where I'm starting to think that doesn't sound terribly healthy. I'm not going to go fair because life is not fair. That's a fallacy. We need to stop expecting life to be fair all the time and just deal with what is. But there are some what is that we can change, because not only are they not fair, they're really unjust, and they're really not a good way to found a society. They're not a good way for us to interact harmoniously with each other when us over here are looking at you over there thinking, okay, so you've got everything and I've got nothing because of where, who to, and when we were born. So it's not a meritocracy at all then. So if I work my absolute butt off, I can never be as rich as you. Got it. Well, that seems like a good foundation for a society, or maybe it doesn't. Anywho, the time is midnight. I don't know where all these other tardy bottoms have got to, but we're going to kick off because I want to tell you all about Reform UK, the very right-wing political party in the UK that has been gaining traction over the last decade, I would say, since Brexit, just before maybe. So this is my local elections special. This is the usual format, but with a more UK focus. So the time is midnight in the UK. I am Mama and their cafe is open. So pull up your comfy chair or your beanbag, unless your beautiful, gorgeous, lovely Solly Pops kitty cat has pooed all over it and you had to empty all the polystyrene balls out of the enormous beanbag into a black sack in the garden with a slight wind, trying not to lose the little polystyrene balls all over the garden, because once you've put the outer in the washing machine and it's no longer got poo and stuff on, you can get it back out and then try and tip them back in. That's the stage we're at. It's all been washed. It's been hanging in the drying cupboard, and now it's dry, ready for me to try and transfer millions of teeny tiny polystyrene balls from the black sack back into the beanbag. And I'm in no rush to do that because it doesn't stink anymore. So I've done the stuff to de-stink it. The beanbag can wait. I got stuff to do. Anyway, hopefully yours are still comfy and not covered in cat poop or pee. Get your warm milky drink. Say hi to MJ, who's just joined us. Tamara, grab your water. Grab your adult beverages if that's more your cup of tea. Excuse the pun. Wrap yourself in your snuggliest, warmest blanket, and I will begin. Welcome to a UK-focused version of The Cafe. We're going to have a look, hey MJ, at Reform UK for a local elections special, because we have local elections on Thursday, the 7th of May, which is just in a few days' time. We always have elections on a Thursday. I did know why. I can't remember. It's just a thing. And on Thursdays, election days, they have a similar thing to the US, the equal time mandate. And so it's a lot of broadcasters who are broadcasting on Thursdays tend to just avoid political speech whatsoever, because that you can get into an awful lot of trouble if you're seen to be influencing the electorate on polling day itself. That's a big rule. So we're all right. We're on Sunday. We can say what we like. And I don't like Reform. I don't like their values. I don't like their members. I don't like their MPs. I don't like anything about them, pretty much. But if I think of something, I will be sure to let you know. So welcome to my summarisation of Reform UK and the sinister rise of one Temu Trump, or Tory in teal, as my number one son likes to call him, which I think is quite cute. And he says, if I use that, then I have to pay him royalties. I'm pretty sure that any percentage of 0 is also 0, and I will make sure to open a bank account and pay that in as soon as I finish. So this is a warning to everyone. So if you're not in the UK, but you just care, or you know people in the UK, please point them in this direction if they're thinking of voting for Reform UK. Not because I'm some radical left lunatic, but because I've got the receipts. I've seen what a terrible job they're doing. I've seen what terrible human beings they have within their party. And I don't think that's a good thing for the UK. Hello, Bob. Welcome. Get comfy. We're going to cover Russian spies, billionaire donors living in Thailand, a 19-year-old who doesn't believe depression is real, running a multi-million pound health budget. Yes, it is as crazy as RFK Jr. being in charge of your Department of Health. Good question, Tamara. I will explain that in just a moment. What else have we got? We've got the man who lied about buying a house in the constituency that he barely visits while earning £1 million in side hustles, and a woman who urged people to burn down hotels full of asylum seekers being celebrated by this party as a freedom fighter. Oh, yes. The receipts are all here, every single one. You know we don't do anything without receipts. So, warning, some trigger warnings. This episode contains Russian spies, billionaire donors, tax havens, 19-year-olds running health budgets, product placements, Hitler Youth allegations, and a woman who urged burning hotels being celebrated as a freedom fighter. Oh, yeah. And the man who lied about buying a house. So, the UK local elections, to explain to everybody, not just Tamara. These are a bit like your state elections. So we have local councils. In London, London is divided up into separate London boroughs, and they're just like mini councils around London. And then we have one big London assembly that oversees the whole of London. So it's a little bit more complicated in London, but the rest of the country, you have county councils and town councils, parish councils, and it's all those local people who decide how your local taxes that are collected locally are spent. So very similar to your state elections, school boards, all that sort of stuff. We all it's all merged into one in our local councils. So the question is basically, you will have for your constituency, you will have a total number, or you'll have a total list of candidates who have put themselves forward to be members of your local council, and you get a certain amount that you're allowed to pick. Sometimes also on the ballot is your choice of member of the London Assembly. It depends if that's coming up for a vote. I'm not sure. Sometimes there's local mayors, but always it's the local council seats. So who's going to make up the people on your councils who will decide how to spend the money they collect from you and how much money they're going to collect from you. So, as I say, they are Thursday, so just days away. And when I started doing this, my intention was to sit down and write you something sensible and measured about local democracy. Because, as we all know, that's where it starts, not just in the UK, not just in the US, everywhere. We have to make a difference at a local level, and that will grow. We need our voices heard, and it's not accessible for all of us to go and line up and stand for Senate seats, but we can all do something. Even if it's just deciding who's going to represent us by voting. So when I started pulling the local democracy thread, I found that that thread very quickly led to Russian spies, people convicted for assault, six-figure donations from companies who were then going on to be endorsed by particular political parties. And of course, the child who doesn't believe in depression being in charge of a health budget. Welcome, Chris. We're just kicking off. I thought, you know what? A sensible and measured can wait. Tonight, let's bring the receipts, the big ones, laminated. Because that's what you expect. And that's what I like to bring you. So this is the story of Reform UK. Where they came from, who's paying for them, always follow that money. Who they really are, and most importantly right now, what they've actually done with the power when they've already had it. Because they are about to ask for a lot more of it. And the British public deserve to know what they'd be voting for. So settle in. It's going to take a little while, but it's worth every single minute. I promise you that. We don't have our lovely admin, Amy, with us tonight. She's traveling across Texas to visit family. So I will be trying to keep an eye on the time, but I'm pretty sure that Glenn said he's popping on for a later than normal Sunday meeting without the Q&A at 8:30 Eastern time. So I think we'll be all right. But still, I shan't linger. I'll get straight on with it. So let's get started. So where did Reform UK come from? Because most of us don't really know. Hey, Amy. Oh my God. I just literally just said you weren't going to be here, and there you are. What do I know? The rest is good. Okay, the rest is good. Oh, 7:30. Oh my God. So am I going to clash with him? Oh, hell's bells. Well, you don't have to stick around because he's going to do something about Todd Blanche, which sounds absolutely delicious. So anybody who needs to go, you are excused in advance. I don't need a letter from your mums. We're all good. It may well be more pertinent to you than my telling you who not to vote for in the UK elections that you can't actually vote in. So you decide. Oh, I got an hour and 15. Amazing. Thank you, Amy. So to understand Reform UK, you have to understand that this is not a party that grew organically out of the British public's hopes and concerns. This is basically the third iteration of a political vehicle, a political brand, if you like, that was built, driven into the ground, rebuilt, rebranded, driven again, always with the same man lurking around the steering wheel. We start with UKIP, the UK Independence Party. This was Nigel Farage's original home. Now, you may have heard of Nigel Farage, even if you're in the US, because he's one of Trump's buddies. His surname is spelled Farage. In the UK, the word garage, where you put your vehicle, is spelled Garage. So as far as I'm concerned, Farage rhymes with Garage, so it's Nigel Farage, no matter what he says. I apologise, Nigel, if you find that insulting. I also don't give a shit because you're an odious little twat. But that's just my opinion, okay? And I'm allowed to have that opinion. And you're a big one for free speech, Nigel, so, you know, no problems there, I foresee. So, the UKIP party. A party that, and I want to be fair here, because we'll always be balanced. We always do the things. Bye, MJ. Lovely to see you. Yes. So UKIP, UK Independence Party, genuinely reflected a real strand of public feeling about the European Union. I have to say, a lot of that feeling was stoked by misinformation in the beautiful British press, in my opinion. You ask people, what are these rules that Europe are forcing onto the UK that you don't think we should have to adhere to? And I guarantee you, if you get an answer, it will be bendy bananas. I'm not going there. But I don't care. I really don't care what shape my banana is. I care how much my banana costs. I actually don't, because I hate bananas. Sorry, bananas. It's a me thing. It's not a you. Anyhow, Farage was very good at tapping into that Euroscepticism. He was a compelling political commentator. I will give him that much as it pains me. And it does. But we've seen it. We've seen it before. These disgustingly hideous, horrible creatures. Go have some of that baby love, because we're not talking about nice things. You go do nice things, Miss Amy, and I'll keep an eye on the time. They somehow managed to grab a section of the population, reel them in, and inspire them into thinking they're the next Messiah. And they're not. They're usually just a very naughty boy. If you've seen Monty Python's The Life of Brian, you will understand that. If not, please go and watch it, because it's one of the most fabulously funny, slightly, what's the word? When you're blasphemous, yeah, movies that you'll ever see. And it's just really, really funny and lovely. And I love it. And yeah, little plug there for Monty Python, because I'm sure they need it from me. You know, the lady with the half a dozen people watching her. It's fine. You know, all praise is good praise. So by 2018, UKIP had collapsed into chaos, unfortunately, largely because its then leader, Gerard Batten, appointed the English Defence League, the EDL's, Tommy Robinson. And if you've never heard of Tommy Robinson, that's great. Think, what's it called? Oh, what's the other one like Temu? I could say Temu, but I've already used Temu. What's the other one where we all buy our shit from? Oh, it's completely gone out of my head. Well, let's just call him Temu Andrew Tate. He is not nearly as charismatic, because, you know, Andrew Tate has got something that keeps the girls flocking to him. Oh, there's a little fly. That's quite sweet. Yeah, he's just a horrible, tiny, tiny little name. And his real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon. But for some reason, he thinks that the double barrel surname doesn't make him sound enough like man of the people. Yeah, down with the common man. So he changed Stephen Yaxley Lennon to Tommy Robinson. And Gerard Batten, the then leader of UKIP, appointed him as his personal advisor. This is not a good look. Tommy Robinson is an absolute racist. Yep, that's pretty much his entire CV. I can't think of anything else. So Nigel Farage left UKIP in disgust, saying that the party was now, and I quote, obsessed with Islam, not just Islamic extremism, but Islam. And that the association, in his opinion, with Tommy Robinson damaged the whole cause of Brexit, the UK break with the European Union. Now, while I don't agree with the latter, because we all know what a shit show Brexit's turned into, I actually find myself agreeing with Farage there, saying, yes, Islamic extremism, bad. Islam, just a religion like any other. We all agreed? I think we are. Note that for later, though, because Farage's relationship with Tommy Robinson's fan base gets considerably more murky and complex as we go on. as these things tend to do. So then we have the Brexit Party, born from racism and managed to last 62 whole days under their first leader. I shall tell you more. In November 2018, Farage and a woman called Catherine Blakelock incorporated what would become the Brexit Party. Blakelock was a former UKIP economics spokesperson and currency trader, and she publicly launched it on the 20th of January 2019. She was its founding leader, and she lasted exactly 62 days. Why was that, you may ask? Well, yes, it's the racist, xenophobic horror show tweets that crawl out of the woodwork whenever anybody kind of pokes their head over the parapet and says, I'm a good person, believe in me. And then Twitter says, are you though? Because look, she had written anti-Islamic tweets before taking the role, and these were recovered by the anti-racism group Hope Not Hate and shown to the Guardian newspaper. And they included, and I am quoting directly here because it's too obscene to paraphrase, quote, Islam equals submission, mostly to raping men, it seems. And comments about observing a drug deal involving mostly Muslim girls in a lift. Blakelock, not surprisingly, resigned when these tweets became public. Farage called her comments horrible and intolerant, that's a quote, and took over as leader. 62 days. Seriously, I've had houseplants with longer political careers, and I kill houseplants, not deliberately. We don't advocate violence here. They just don't seem to like to live around me. But I'm not so bad in the garden with my vegetable patch. I did some great tomatoes last year, and we'll just see what this summer brings. Anyway, so now what? The Brexit Party stood in the 2019 pre-pandemic. Do we all remember back then? It's a bit of a blur, isn't it? European parliamentary elections and won the most votes in the UK. 31.6%. A genuinely remarkable result for a party that was only 6 months old, and quite shocking in my humble opinion. At the 2019 general election, Farage pulled all his candidates from any Conservative-held seats to avoid splitting the Leave vote. So you had Brexit Party and the Tories who wanted us to leave Europe, and pretty much anybody right-thinking, not including me because I was fooled and I will put my hands up, on the other side saying, no, we're stronger together. Which turns out we are. And we had to learn the hard way. I love the way that LBC radio presenter Mr. James O'Brien describes it as the only country in living history to ever apply economic sanctions to itself. Because that's what we did. So yes, it's a bit like gerrymandering, but they weren't redrawing the districts. It was just if there was a Tory standing and they had enough support, then all the Brexit candidates kind of stood back so that they wouldn't dilute the vote by splitting all the right wing half and half so they could get a stronger, a bit like what you see going on in the California mayoral elections. You've got all those different people, you've got loads of Republicans, loads of Democrats, and if you've got 2 Republicans and 27 Democrats, then there's just no way that any one single Democrat is going to out primary the 2 guys who are getting all the Republican votes. And so that's basically what they did. So Brexit happened after a very narrow win for Leave. It was 52% of those voting to 48%, which if you look at the statistics, because we all know there are lies, damn lies and statistics, you could say that overwhelmingly, the UK did not vote to leave the European Union because of all those people who did not vote. I will say this once, I may say it again. If you do not vote, you cannot have a say in the outcome. Feel free to bitch and whine about the results, but just remember there was a point in time where you had the opportunity to change the results, and it's not now, okay? So don't miss the boat. Make your vote count. So, Brexit happened. January 2020, the Brexit Party no longer really had a raison d'etre. So in 2021, it was renamed Reform UK. Farage stepped back and Richard Tice took the leadership. That would be Richard Tice, whose partner, Isabel Oakeshott, lives in the Middle East, where she doesn't have to pay taxes in the same way that she would if she lived in the UK. I'm sure there are lots of other reasons for her being there, the weather, the job opportunities. She's a journalist, you know, and I say that in the loosest sense of the word, in my opinion. So she can file that copy from anywhere, and it's probably because it's got really nice shops or culture or something, and nothing to do with the tax advantages of living in the Middle East, because, you know, I wouldn't accuse anybody of doing something for tax purposes without the receipts, which I don't have, but, you know, wouldn't be hard to get them. Anywho, Richard Tice took over the leadership, and the new platform of this Reform UK party was broader than the narrow let's get out of Europe focus that it had before. Taxes, immigration, net zero, public spending, they were their focuses. Lower taxes for rich people, immigration, we don't want any of that. Net zero's a hoax, and you sort out your own healthcare and stuff, because we've got better things to spend the public's money on. Remind you of anyone? Just asking the question. Anywho, so there we are. Farage gone, Tice in, and then June 2024, it's all change again. Farage sweeps back in, takes over the leadership of the party, and announced he was standing as an MP in Clacton. Having said in an interview just months earlier, and I quote, "Do I want to be an MP? Do I want to spend every Friday for the next 5 years in Clacton?" Asking the question as Nigel does, and the reporter noticed his expression suggested, no, he didn't. In fact, he did not. He did not want to spend every Friday in Clacton, and this becomes extremely relevant later on. So we get to part 2. Follow the money, because that's where it all unravels. Before we get to the scandals, which are the gift that just keeps on giving, we need to talk about the money, because Reform UK is not a political party in any meaningful traditional sense. It's a private limited company, and it's majority owned by Uncle Nige, financed almost entirely by a tiny group of extremely wealthy men who do not live in the UK. Shock, horror, I know, but I'm sure it's all entirely innocent and above board. The 3-man bank. That's not rhyming slang, by the way, just in case for those with the dirty minds. Research from the organisation Democracy for Sale shows that 3/4 of all donations to Reform since the Brexit Party days, 75%, if you prefer it in percentages, has come from just 3 men. Christopher Harborne, Jeremy Hosking, and somebody we've come across already, one Richard Tice. Together, those 3 have provided 23 million, million with an M, of the 30 million donated since 2019. That's quite a big chunk. Well, 75%, 3/4, however you like to split it. So let's have a chat about these guys, shall we? Because I'm sure they're all good eggs and jolly decent patriots. Let's talk about Christopher Harborne first. He is a British Thai billionaire technology and cryptocurrency investor. And if you want to know more about cryptocurrency, come back next week where I do a deeper dive into crypto and how it's going to destroy us all. So Christopher Harborne lives in Thailand because of course he does. He also holds Thai citizenship under the name Chakrit Sakunkrit. Because why wouldn't you? In September 2025, he donated 9 million with an M pounds to Reform UK in a single transaction. And that is the largest ever political donation from a living individual in British history. 9 million pounds. The organisation Transparency International UK did the maths. It would take the average person approximately 3,000 years to donate an equivalent amount. As in, if you started donating every penny of your disposable income just before the Iron Age, you'd be about there by now. Just about. Maybe. If you cancelled your Netflix subscription. It's exactly like Musk, Zuckerberg, and all the rest of them. Yeah, tomorrow. So, 2024, Christopher Harborne donated £5 million to Reform shortly before Farage announced he'd changed his mind and decided to stand as a candidate in the next general election. Yay, go Uncle Nige! Farage says Harborne has never asked for anything in return, and I'm sure that's right. I have absolutely no reason to doubt that at all, because that would be suggesting that Uncle Nige is a big fat stinky liar, and I wouldn't do that, despite the fact that we do have lots of evidence of Uncle Nige telling big fat stinky lies. But you know, correlation does not necessarily mean causation. Moving swiftly on. This is a good one. The JCB pothole scandal. Pay to play in broad daylight. This one is special. This is the most brazen, barely disguised donor to policy pipeline I've ever seen in British politics. And that is saying something, because I lived through the Cash for Questions scandal, where apparently big companies, influential people could pay MPs to table questions in their best interests in House of Commons sessions and put these questions before government. And in return, these companies and wealthy individuals will give them a few quid in cash. It was all exposed, big nasty scandal, duck ponds and horse stable heating. It was ridiculous. Anyhow, Lord Anthony Bamford is the chairman of JCB. JCB are a construction equipment company. They make diggers and all those good bright yellow construction equipment. He's worth an estimated 9.45 billion pounds. And MPs, Tamara, are members of Parliament, and they are the members of the House of Commons. That's the working arm of government that set the rules, a bit like your Senate and senators. And then we have the House of Lords, which is the unelected body, even though your House of Representatives is elected. But they're there to kind of oversee the legislative process and make sure that the rules are adhered to and things like that. So yeah, they're a bit like your senators, I think, is the closest comparison. So Anthony Bamford, November 2025, his company JCB donated £200,000 to Reform UK. Farage stood up and publicly thanked Lord Bamford by name. And then what happened? Well, I couldn't make this shit up. Reform leaflets that they post through your door for the local elections telling you why you should vote for the Reform Party, what they're going to do for you, who their local candidates are. The ones that are going through people's letterboxes right now, ready for Thursday's elections. These leaflets were promoting the JCB Pothole Pro machine as their solution, the Reform Party's solution, to fixing roads. In Kirklees, in Barnet in London, in Warwickshire in the East Midlands, Reform councils that already had power were trialling the machine and posting videos about how wonderful it was. The Warwickshire Council leader visited JCB's headquarters in Staffordshire and filmed himself standing in front of the machine, saying it was wonderful. £2,000 donation from JCB to Reform, November 2025. Plus £8,400 worth of helicopter trips for Farage to tour JCB's site. Now, the previous Lincolnshire Conservative administration, Tories, not Remain voters, not enemies of reform in any stretch of the imagination, they had trialled that same machine back in 2021. And their conclusions? It did not offer good value for money. So its value for money has already been assessed as falling short. So why on earth would Reform want to promote it? It's almost like they've got some sort of vested interest in improving the share portfolio, the share prices of JCB. Oh, JCB who made a £200,000 donation. Probably unconnected, probably coincidental. Reform relaunched the trial, however. The Green councillors from the Green Party, we have lots of parties rather than just two and a bit, in Warwickshire, they warned the council leader there that he was, quote, walking a fine line and needed to, quote, be very clear about what his interests are. As I say, could be anything, could just be coincidence that Reform are promoting something that's already proven to not be good value for money at the same time as getting massive donations from that same company. These coincidences happen all the time in politics, and I'm certain that they're even innocent sometimes. But a company donating £250,000 to your party, the party then putting that company's product on your election leaflets, your councillors filming themselves promoting that product, and your leader doing a helicopter tour of their factory, all paid for by the billionaire who donated the money in the first place. I'm just not feeling pro-entrepreneurship. This is what we call in the business a receipt, a big laminated JCB yellow receipt. And there's a footnote on Bamford worth noting. In 2023, the HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, it's the tax people, launched a probe into alleged aggressive tax avoidance by Bamford and his brother concerning shares held in Bermudan offshore family trusts. A man under investigation by the taxman for tax avoidance was donating to a party that promises tax cuts for the wealthy. And I am positive that the timing could well be entirely coincidental. Yeah. So let's have a look at the company that runs this political party. This really doesn't get enough attention, in my humble opinion. Reform UK is structured as a private limited company. Farage was the majority shareholder with 60% of the shares. As of 2025, it was transferred to a new entity called Reform 2025 Limited, a company limited by guarantee with Farage and somebody called Zia Yusuf, who we'll find out more about later, as directors. And what possible organization with the name 2025 in it could possibly be a bad thing, right? Right. The filing of this company states that it has no, quote, person with significant control. There is no traditional party membership, so we can't join, pay our dues to be part of the party, and then have a say in how it's run, who its elected officials are, all that good stuff that you can with all the other political parties that I'm aware of. There's no internal democratic structure. Farage controls everything. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. It's an unusual thing. It's an uncommon thing. But it's just a thing. This person, though, Uncle Nige, who likes to portray himself as the man of the people, is running a company asking his members to give him control of their local councils. He wants to control where the money comes from, where it goes, who makes the decisions, and none of that is accountable to the members. No receipts. Unless Mama finds them, which of course I have. Shall we move on to the criminals within the party? And I say that with absolutely no fear of lawsuits, because these are people who have been convicted of crimes, therefore, by the dictionary definition, are criminals. First, and absolutely scandalous. I have other words, but, we want to stay on the right side of lawsuits. This is a scandal by any measure, and probably the most serious scandal in the party's history. And I want to say that clearly before I start. I am very aware this is going to sound like the plot of a spy thriller, but it is not. It is real. It happened. It resulted in the longest sentence handed down at the Old Bailey, the nickname for the Central Criminal Court in London, in a political corruption case in recent British history. Nathan Gill was an MEP, a member of the European Parliament, first for UKIP, then for the Brexit Party, Farage's party. And he held this role from 2014 to 2020. He then went on to become the leader of Reform UK Wales. So, we've got that little country, not the big mammals that swim around with the dolphins and the sharks and things. The country, WALES. So he became their leader, the Reform UK leader in Wales in 2021. He was the party's most prominent figure in that country, in Wales. He ran their entire Welsh Senedd campaign, and the Senedd is the devolved parliament in Wales that look after some of the government functions that have been devolved from the central UK government. In September 2025, Nathan Gill pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery. Specifically, on at least 8 occasions between December 2018 and July 2019, a Ukrainian national and pro-Kremlin politician called Oleg Voloshin instructed Gill to make statements in the European Parliament and to Russian news outlets that would benefit Russia regarding events in Ukraine. And what did he get in return? I think we all know the answer. He do be getting some cash. Yeah, he did. He pled guilty to 8 counts of bribery and was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months imprisonment. The money trail, that went all the way back to Viktor Medvedchuk, and he's a Russian oligarch personally close to, guess who? I bet you can't guess. Can you guess? That's right, Vladimir Putin, who founded the bribes through Voloshin. One speech Gil delivered in the European Parliament on Kazakhstan had been scripted entirely by his Russian handler. There was also evidence he'd recruited other people working in the European Parliament to push Russian talking points, though, and the judge was very careful to note this, there's no evidence that those individuals knew Gil was being paid. He was caught at Manchester Airport in September 2021 attempting to travel to Russia, because of course he did. His phone was seized. The messages found used code words such as payments being referred to as, quote, promised Christmas gifts and, quote, postcards. Promised Christmas gifts. No, thankfully, I am unaware of any connection, Tamara, between any of these cretins and Epstein. So I guess that's one in their favor. But the night is young. Yes, so in the European Parliament, this was all going on while representing British voters for the Kremlin. This is the first criminal conviction of a British elected politician for accepting Russian political influence payments. Not a historical footnote, the first one in 2025, last year, in Farage's party. Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb, who sentenced Gil to 10.5 years, said he had abused a position of significant authority and trust, end quote. She described bribery as, quote, a malignancy on public life, and she called his actions, quote, a grave betrayal of the trust invested in you by the electorate, the people who vote, the people that they want to vote for reform, the party who had people like Nathan Gill in senior positions. Just putting that out there. You might think that's fine, that's great, that's what you want to vote for, and that's entirely your prerogative. What did Farage say about this terribly shocking news of Nathan Gill and his Russian donors? He was, quote, deeply shocked. He believed Gill was, and I quote, a bad apple who had betrayed reform, and said his actions were, quote, reprehensible, treasonous, and unforgivable. He also tried to distance himself an awful lot from Nathan Gill, and then lots of people who aren't big fans of reform started posting photographs of the two of them together at Reform Party functions and other public spaces, and you just got to wondering, how well do you actually know this guy you say you don't know very well? And it's just a question, Uncle Nige. As you say, we're just asking questions. I'll come back to the just asking questions and why that's key when we're talking about Uncle Nige, because he does like to ask quite pointed questions that might be, what's the word I'm looking for? Inciting things. Maybe. Just, a suggestion. Maybe not. But one bad apple, fine. That bad apple, though, Uncle Nige, was in a barrel that you have been standing in since 1999. And if I kept finding bad apples in the same barrel, at some point, I would be asking questions about the barrel. Yeah. Just a thought. You do you, though. Next convict on the list, we have James McMurdoch. Oh, this was a beautiful scandal and really underplayed by Reform. This MP actually hid his prior conviction. He was elected as Reform UK's MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock, which I'm in East London. It's just a bit further east towards the east of the UK, so towards the east coast. That's Essex. These are Essex areas. And that was in July 2024. He won by only 98 votes. His majority was the 7th smallest in the entire general election of 2024. But in 2006, when he was aged 19, McMurdoch was convicted of assaulting his then girlfriend outside a nightclub in Chelmsford, to which he pleaded guilty. Eventually, only after the victim and her family had given their witness statements, including how he kicked her in the head, allegedly. He went to jail. The victim's mother described him as a, quote, monster, and rejected the notion that he should be allowed to represent the public. I kind of agree with her on that one. Call me controversial, but it's not really the kind of man I'm feeling is going to stand up for my rights as a woman. But I don't know him. I could be wrong. But what did little Jamie not do? Well, he did not disclose this conviction before he was elected. Shock, horror. Well, how could Reform have known? Well, they did. And they later admitted that they'd known about it when they conducted their own vetting process. You know, checking the people that they were putting up as candidates for the elections. And they said nothing. He, McMurdoch, said that it was his, quote, biggest regret. And most importantly, he apologized. Well, that's all right then. Let's all move on. Nothing to see here. Except he later left the party anyway. But that wasn't over this. That was over separate allegations that he'd claimed £70,000 in bounce back loans after COVID for companies that were effectively dormant. Not running, not companying, just names at company's house. And here's the kicker. Not a single Reform UK MP attended the parliamentary debate on what? Violence against women and girls. Not one. The statistics show that 1 in 5 of their MPs had a conviction for assaulting a woman. They knew it before the election, said nothing, and then couldn't find time to show up for the debate. Tell me who that looks like. They'll tell you who they are, and we should believe them. I will clarify, they only had 5 MPs and one of them was convicted for assault on a woman. So that is 1 in 5. So the statistics are good, but I don't want to be misleading because it's bad enough in its entirety without me trying to embellish it. There's more. Let's have a look at the time. Oh, we better crack on because I've got loads more. So, Uncle Nige, the absentee, and the cameo catastrophe. Now, have you heard of the company Cameo, where you can get celebrities, famous people to record messages specifically for you and you give them a few quid for doing so? Well, let's have a chat about this MP for Clacton, Nigel Farage, man of the people, voice of the forgotten, the bloke who is definitely committed to his constituents and not at all using a safe seat in one of England's most deprived constituencies as a launching pad for a media career and a run on Downing Street, i.e. the top job, Prime Minister. He's never in Clacton. Don't take it from me. Ask the people of Clacton. In September 2024, just 2 months after being elected, Uncle Nige announced he would not be holding face-to-face constituency surgeries. That is the opportunity for members of your constituency, your area, to come with their issues to their elected MP, the person that they've said can go and represent them in Parliament, and say, these are my issues. Please, can you help me with these issues? Please, can you raise them on a national level? Please, can we get something happening on these terrible things that I'm having to live through? He announces, nah, not going to be doing that. Yeah, like a town hall, exactly. Like a town hall in private. So you kind of do, you go in for your little meeting and then you leave and then they have another meeting. It's like going to see your doctor. That's why they call them surgeries, I guess. But yeah, no, he's not meeting with the likes of you and me. No. Do you know why? Well, no, neither do we, because Uncle Nige told us that the House of Commons Speaker's office had advised against doing this, against holding surgeries in his constituency, like his job, for security reasons. You're sort of left there thinking, well, okay, you are a divisive character. I'll grant you that. Perhaps you are in more danger. We have had MPs attacked in recent history quite horribly and killed by lunatics. That's not the medical term for them, but I don't think anybody going up to somebody they don't know and slaughtering them is sane by traditional standards. But do you want to know the interesting thing? By October, the following month, the Press Association reported that the Speaker's office had given no such advice. Uncle Nige told a porky. Porky pie, lie, rhyming slang, Cockney rhyming slang. That's not why he wasn't meeting his constituents. And he's kind of failed to really address this, so your guess is as good as mine. It could be because he thinks he's too important to be consorting with the likes of you and me. It could be that he's too fucking busy with all his side hustles. It could be a number of reasons we just don't know, so I wouldn't like to speculate. In his first year as an MP, Farage spoke fewer times in Parliament than any other British political party leader with a seat in Westminster. The least of any of the party leaders. That would be his other part of his main job. So you represent your constituents by talking to your constituents to find out what their problems are and taking that information and presenting it to Parliament. So he's not been doing either an awful lot. But, the man's got TV shows to present and newspaper columns to write. So, it's not got a lot of time. You might suggest that he should have maybe thought about that and just do one job if he can't do them both well. I couldn't possibly. The exact number of times in his first year that he spoke in Parliament was 45. The leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, 226. The leader of the Liberal Democrats, 97. Both Green Party co-leaders, that's a split job between the two of them, 238. Uncle Nige, 45. Bet he's doing a lot of other important stuff, probably. I guess, maybe. I don't know. Not seen any. No, wait, he has been busy because he made at least 8 trips to the United States. Yes, he did. So, busy. He flew to America the day after the state opening of Parliament, and that was paid for by Christopher Harborne, wealthy Thailand-based billionaire, at a cost of nearly £33,000, as Uncle Nige put it, to, quote, say hello to his friend Donald Trump. Nice work if you can get it. In December, he missed parliamentary days to speak at a dinner with everybody's favourite wears too many clothes, Steve Bannon. Missed days at work to go have dinner with Steve Bannon. I'm just telling you what it is. That particular dinner was being hosted by the New York Young Republicans Club. So I'm not entirely sure what that's got to do with Uncle Nige's job as an MP in the UK Parliament. But then I'm not a politician. I'm not a political commentator. I'm just a 50-year-old mum with a little midnight cafe. I just say what I see. And despite Uncle Nige being vocally opposed to the government's smoking ban, which has only done good things for the health of everybody, Uncle Nige did not vote for it in Parliament. Why? Why did he miss this important vote that he had a very specific opinion on? Because he was busy presenting his television show on GB News, or as the lovely James O'Brien calls it, GBBs, because we have a channel in the UK created by the BBC for really little teeny tiny children and babies called CBBS. It comes from CBBC, which is the children's BBC channel, and this is an even babyer one, CBBS. So yeah, James O'Brien likes to call it GBBs because they are like a bunch of kids, only less intelligent. Apologies to any kids listening. I really can't make this shit up. So let's have a look at the house that doesn't belong to him, shall we? Well, in November 2024, Farage announced with considerable fanfare that he had bought a house in Clacton. He said, and I quote, "I've just exchanged contracts on the house that I'll be living therein. Isn't that good enough?" He told Sky News in January 2025. He told LBC, quote, "That's why you can see me out and about, often on a Saturday morning, out buying the essentials, limes, tonic, all that sort of thing." Uncle Nige, man of the people, limes and tonic for your G&T. Go on, Uncle Nige. In May 2025, The Guardian reported that this property that he'd exchanged on, a substantial detached house valued at around £885,000 in an upmarket part of Clacton-on-Sea, was registered solely in the name of his girlfriend, Laura Ferrari. No mortgage is registered on the title. Cash purchase. Farage later admitted that he had misspoken. Oh, the misspeaks. They'll come back to bite you. And he said that Miss Ferrari had bought it with her own money. But questions asking where she got this money from have so far been unsatisfactorily addressed, in my opinion. Questions were raised about whether Uncle Nige had placed the property in Ferrari's name to avoid paying a higher rate of stamp duty, property tax, which would apply given the fact that he already owns multiple other properties, a property worth around £1 million in Kent, 2 houses in Lydd-on-Sea, held through his company, Thorn in the Side, and a property in Tandridge in Surrey, a very nice county in the UK. No registering of this purchase in the Register of Members' Interests, which is where you have to record any significant cash transactions as a member of Parliament, because, you know, it wasn't his, it was his girlfriend's. He just misspoke. This man is the same man who spent literal years hammering Angela Rayner of the Labour Party over her property tax arrangements, whereby it was concluded she may have fallen short of paying tax on her second property by about £10,000. He told GBBs, quote, "If it were me, you'd all be demanding I resign." He said that on camera, into a microphone, knowing what he knew about his own situation. The audacity, the sheer uncut audacity of the man. I almost respect it, except I don't, because I'm not an arsehole. Not suggesting anybody that I've mentioned is an arsehole. You're free to come to those conclusions for yourself. So let's have a look at the money machine that is Nigel Farage. On top of his £91,346 annual MP salary, for which we are really struggling to find evidence that he's actually working, Farage has made close to £1 million with an M from second jobs since being elected in July 2024. It's, as I said, nice work if you can get it. Nearly 400,000 from GBBs, 280,000 as a brand ambassador for a gold bullion firm. Let that one settle. Man of the people, gold bullion firm. I'm always making that connection. I don't know about you. £135,000 from personal cameo videos. We'll come back to those. A £25,000 a month column in the Daily Telegraph. He is the highest earning MP in Westminster, representing one of the most deprived constituencies in the whole of England. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mismatch, isn't there? It just feels a little bit icky. It feels like, how can he speak for us when he's so detached from us? Might be a question that you might ask if you were one of his constituents. I'm just putting it out there. So more about those cameo videos. This is juicy, but quite horrible too. In March 2026, The Guardian published an investigation into thousands of personalised video messages Farage had sold on the Cameo platform. Over 4,300 of them. Well, no wonder he hasn't got time to hold surgeries or ask questions in Parliament or turn up for votes. He's a busy man. Well, these personalized videos ranged in price from between £71 to £3,752 each. And what the Guardian investigation into them revealed was extraordinary. He'd used the phrase, quote, "if in doubt, kick them out," which is a militant anti-immigration slogan, more than 20 times in the videos. You know, there comes a point once, twice, 3 times at a push where you can, you know, misspeak. But over 20 times repeating the same phrase kind of sounds a little bit deliberate. Just suggesting, in my opinion. He also made misogynistic remarks about left-wing politicians, including your beloved AOC. Hey, Laura. Welcome. Come in. He had referenced anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, including asking in one video, is it the Bilderbergers that are running the world? Could be the Masons. Some think it's the Rothschilds. Maybe it's George Soros. End quote. But the one that really, really stopped the room. He was paid £142 for a video in which he endorsed an event called the Road Rage Terror Tour, naming 3 organizers by name and encouraging people to attend. Those 3 men were the founders of Diagolon, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Diagolon. We really need Summer here. They are a Canadian extremist movement classified by the US State Department as a far-right extremist group, by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network as a neo-fascist militia, and described by former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as a white nationalist violent organization. Their leaders had been photographed in neo-Nazi symbols. Their events featured Holocaust denial jokes. And I'm really sorry for any of our Jewish community who are offended by that. We're offended too. It's disgusting. Diagolon, however you pronounce them, their leaders subsequently used that video that Farage created for them in their own propaganda material alongside anti-Semitic imagery. What can you say to that? That endorsement video for that group was recorded 10 days after Farage was elected as MP for Clacton. 10 days. Well, his new constituents were presumably hoping he might have time to eventually hold a surgery and talk to them and find out what's going wrong in their lives. His spokesman did say that he'd been using the platform, quote, without knowledge of the individuals and, quote, at that scale, the occasional mistake can occur. 4,300 videos. That is quite a scale. It's an average of nearly 3 a day. No wonder he couldn't find time for the other boring MP stuff that he was being paid nearly £100,000 a year to do. Farage himself compared it to a shoe shop, and you're gonna like this, not a lot. Quote, if I sell you a pair of shoes and it turns out the buyer is a convicted murderer, is that the fault of the person selling the shoes? End quote. The answer, Nigel, is it depends. Whether the shoe shop has a death to enemies sign written in the window and the convicted murderer keeps coming back for more and more pairs of shoes and you keep selling them to him even though you know he's a convicted murderer, at some point, you're in the shoe business. Okay. He did stop using Cameo all the way back on the 20th of March, 2026. What's that, a month ago? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Reform said it was, quote, paused for security reasons. He had made over £135,000 from it since the election, since getting the job that he seems to be struggling to do, in my opinion. But to really understand the man, we need to look at the boy, of course. The boy from Dulwich. Now, I used to live just down the road from Dulwich, and my own GP, my doctor, his children went to Dulwich College, which many years ago, so did Uncle Nige. This is important context, not gossip. This is an opportunity to talk about what we know about his schooling and his school years. Because in 2025, just last year, what had been whispered about for decades finally found its way fully into the public record. Farage attended Dulwich College, as I mentioned. This is one of Britain's most prestigious independent schools, currently charging over £10,000 per term, 3 terms a year. And he was there from 1975, great year, fantastic year, I was born, to 1982. The controversy about his behaviour there was first aired in 2013 when journalist Michael Crick uncovered a letter written in June 1981 by an English teacher called Chloe Deakin to the headmaster, arguing against Farage's appointment as a school prefect. So that's like the senior boys with sort of extra responsibilities. If you don't have prefects. Deakin's letter described staff discussions in which one teacher said Farage was, quote, a fascist, but that was no reason why he would not make a good prefect. Oh, good grief. This provoked considerable reaction from their colleagues, as you might imagine. The letter itself described his, quote, publicly professed racist and neo-fascist views. Deakin did not know Farage personally. She was reporting what staff had said. The letter was written in 1981, long before Farage was famous, long before anyone had political motive to smear him. A bit like the birthday letter in the Epstein files. In December 2025, 26 former pupils and teaching staff at Dulwich signed an open letter in The Guardian asking Farage to apologise for racist and anti-Semitic behaviour. For the first time, one former Jewish classmate, Peter Etejui, went on the record. He alleged that Farage would sidle up to him and say, Hitler was right, or gas them. Sometimes adding what Peter described as a long hiss to simulate the sound of gas showers. Have you heard anything more disgusting? 8 other former pupils corroborated Peter's account to The Guardian. Sounds like receipts to me, but who knows? Oh, wait, let's see if there's more. Other former pupils alleged Farage had called a classmate a very disparaging, racist insult beginning with a P that is used to describe people of Pakistani origin, and I'm not going to say it because it's disgusting. And also told him to go back home, I quote. Another black former pupil alleged repeated remarks, including, quote, that's the way back to Africa, end quote. I'm so sorry for any offence that those comments cause. Farage's responses to these claims over the years have shifted quite a lot. It's hard to keep your story straight when you're lying. I'm not saying that those two things are connected, it being hard to keep your story straight when you're lying, and Nigel Farage's responses shifting. I'm just saying they're two things. In 2013, he admitted saying, quote, some ridiculous things to wind up teachers, but he denied any racist intent. By 2025, his spokesman called the claims, quote, wholly untrue and threatened legal action. On the 24th of November, 2025, a great day because one of your favourite live podcast hosts turned 50 years old. Hello. sorry, I shouldn't be making light of it, but it's hard when you see your birthday in print, isn't it? So on my birthday, my 50th birthday, when asked directly whether he'd said anti-Semitic things at school, he said, quote, and this is important, no, not with intent, end quote. Not with intent. Not, I didn't say it. Not, it never happened. Not with intent. Doing a lot of heavy lifting there. That's a very specific and very interesting choice of words for someone who claims the entire thing is made up and requires legal action. The journalist John Sweeney, who has spent years investigating this, said, quote, everything you see in Farage today is the Farage of Dulwich College. He was a bully at school. He's a bully now. End quote. I love John Sweeney. He's great. He's done a lot of work in Ukraine and he's just fabulous. He also challenged the who's that nutty religious group, in my opinion, in the US, the Scientologists. Oh, there is a beautiful, beautiful video of John Sweeney challenging somebody senior in the Scientology hierarchy. That's just, I loved it. He absolutely loses his shit, John Sweeney does, and I am all for it. I think he finds it a little bit embarrassing, but I say, no, you go, John. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about Uncle Nige. I've drawn mine. Sorry. If it looks like a fascist racist, quacks like a fascist racist, and waddles like a fascist racist, I just get the impression it's a bit of a fascist racist. That's all. But you're entirely entitled to make your own opinions, as this is just mine. Oh my God, I've still got loads to do. Right, let's crack on quickly. So, the internal implosion. One of the things reform supporters will tell you about is that Farage brings discipline and unity. The receipts suggest otherwise. I will skip over this because it's not very interesting, and it's about a man called Zia Yusuf, who was the party chairman. He's a Sri Lankan born Muslim millionaire who sold his company for lots and lots of millions of pounds and became a big reform donor. He was the party chairman. Then he wasn't. And then 5 minutes later, he was back again. And it was all over another reform MP called Richard Lowe, or a reform member called Richard Lowe, who criticised the Reform Party, and then the Reform Party referred him to the police for threats of physical violence. Think seashells arranged in the shape 8647, and you'll be in the ballpark as to where that went. Not terribly far. So eventually they went their separate ways. Zia Yusuf settled back into reform, and now he's basically the voice of reform every time they need to roll somebody interesting out, and quite a lot of time that's on the BBC political panel show Question Time. Oh, if we have time, I'll tell you. But I would like to tell you about a lady called Lucy Connolly. Think January the 6th insurrectionist in a skirt. She's not quite that bad. I'll tell you what happened. In July 2024, a horrific event happened in the northwest of England. 3 little girls were murdered at a dance class in Southport near Liverpool. Their names were BB King, Elsie Dot Stankham, and Alice De Silva Aguiar. They were 6, 7, and 9 years old. It was an act of devastating, incomprehensible evil, and collectively we all grieved. In the days that followed, certain people chose to use those children's deaths to incite violence against asylum seekers. For example, Uncle Nige asked questions of the police's response and asked whether they were responding in a certain way because of who the attacker was. This led to hotels being attacked, migrant hotels being attacked, mosques being firebombed, a man was stabbed. Brown and black-skinned people were dragged from their cars by rampaging mobs. It was the worst civil disorder this country had seen in 13 years, since the London riots. In the days that followed, certain people were held accountable for their crimes, thank goodness. One was Lucy Connolly. She was a childminder, let that settle, from Northampton. She posted on Twitter, quote, "Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the effing hotels full of the beaders for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it." End quote. Her post was seen 310,000 times. It had 940 reposts. She sent a WhatsApp the following week. Oh, Nigel Farage. Farage rhymes with garage. Not the way he says it, but the way I say it does. So she sent a WhatsApp after this, after her tweet, saying that tweet had, quote, "bit me on the arse, lol," end quote. She pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred. She was sentenced to 31 months in prison, and a Lord Justice reviewed her sentence and found it not to be excessive. She served 9 months of her sentence. What did Uncle Nige do when she was released? He declared her a, quote, "symbol of Keir Starmer's authoritarian, broken two-tier Britain." What did Richard Tice do? He went to prison to meet her on the day of her release. What did the Reform Party conference do? They brought her on stage in Birmingham and introduced her as, quote, "Britain's favourite political prisoner" and, quote, "a living symbol of two-tier Britain." And the crowd gave her a standing fucking ovation. Farage hugged her on stage at his party conference, the woman who pleaded guilty to inciting people to burn down buildings full of people. She told the audience she would, quote, "love" to work with Reform in the future, and she has since hinted at standing as an MP. Yay, won't that be nice for her constituents? These are the people who are representing or wanting to represent local people in Parliament. So I will whiz through the chaos in the councils that already exist, because it's important if you're thinking of maybe voting for these people to be your local elected officials, thinking, well, maybe not for the country, but maybe locally. The actual murderer, no murderer. She just incited. Oh, the actual murderer, sorry, of the little girls. I don't remember his name, and if I did, I wouldn't repeat it, but I will message you tomorrow the name of the murderer. He was a British born. He was of non-British descent, but he was British born. Welsh, I think. Okay, see you later, guys. All those who are leaving for Glenn's. So we have masses and masses of incompetence within Reform. In May 2025, last year, announce the guest for Tuesday. Yes. Please come back. Anyone who's leaving to go and see Glenn right now, you are absolutely welcome to. But please, please, please come back on Tuesday, because we might be combining forces. That's all I'm going to say. I might have a very, very, very special guest that you're all going to love, God willing and time permitting. So come back on Tuesday and see how I get on with the man, the voice, the Justice Matters, Mr. Glenn Kirshner. because that hopefully will be happening on Tuesday. So I'll see you back here then for all of you who have to nip off and catch up with Glenn and his very wise words on Todd Blanche. I'm definitely going to catch the video recording. So, what have Reform done for us lately? In the May 2025 election, they got 677 council seats. So 677 councillors throughout the country are now members of the Reform Party. They got overall control of 10 councils, and they even got 2 directly elected mayors. The BBC called it a sweeping victory, and then the cameras went home and the receipts started rolling in. The age of incompetence, we'll call it. Let's start with the personnel decisions. In Worcestershire, a 19-year-old Reform councillor who's publicly stated he doesn't believe depression is real was placed in charge of a multi-million-pound health budget. Another Reform councillor, aged 22, was put in charge of children's and adult social care services. The Professional Social Work publication reported serious concerns from social workers about, quote, the clash of values and lack of experience in the new leadership. I've got underwear older than these councillors, and it's got better judgment. In Warwickshire, newly elected Reform Council leader resigned after just 1 month, reportedly because they were overwhelmed by budget deficits and demoralised staff. His replacement, 18 years old, became the youngest county council leader in modern British history. And if you can find him on YouTube, it's freaking hilarious. Others were instructed to, the officers of that council were instructed to simplify briefing documents for Sonny to be able to understand them. Older councillors privately complained that the council was actually being run like a student union. And I can understand why. Then we moved to Kent, just down the road where my youngest goes to school. The Doge disaster. Yeah, we had one. Kent County Council received the most attention. Reform had promised a Doge team inspired by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency in the US. And this was a party of activists sent in to audit the finances / waste, the usual spiel. In practice, all committee meetings scheduled for June were cancelled. Some Reform members even requested July meetings be rearranged because they couldn't attend those either. Opposition councillors described the performance as slow and chaotic, and I think that's being generous. A Kent constituent, the person that these people are supposed to be representing, wrote that the overwhelming sense was one of paralysis. One Reform councillor in Kent was suspended over allegations which are now with the police. Yeah, they did. Derbyshire, let's move up to the Midlands, further north in the UK. In Derbyshire, Reform campaigned on cutting costs, reducing council tax. Once in power, they closed 5 adult learning centres without any consultation. They cut off 1,300 learners from ESOL language classes, digital skills training, and basic education. Thanks, Reform. They abolished the council's climate change committee because, of course, they did. The council leader subsequently admitted a council tax rise may be necessary. The chief executive of the council's salary was raised to above £200,000, despite explicit promises to end bloated salaries. Nottinghamshire, not far from Derbyshire, if you want to know where it is in England. It's the Midlands, East Midlands. In Nottinghamshire, Reform's largest council prize, with 41 of 66 seats, the administration quickly descended into what Searchlight described as paralysis. We've heard that before somewhere. Committee meetings were cancelled. We've heard that before somewhere. Councillors were unable to grasp basic governance. Officers publicly had to correct false claims. 7 councillors have been expelled. 1 has defected to what's now UKIP. 1 faces criminal investigation. Scrutiny committees were threatened with abolition. That's like going into the House of Republicans and abolishing the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee, that kind of thing, but on a local level. This raised serious alarms about democratic oversight. You think? And then we have West Northamptonshire, an area I used to live when I was a little, and the racists, because we've all got them. In West Northamptonshire, 1 councillor was expelled for unspecified conduct concerns. So, what could that be? Well, Councillor Ivan Dabbs was found to have shared Britain First, a far-right neo-Nazi group, posts online, but he was defended by the council leader against much cross-party condemnation. Councillor Ron Furman was discovered to have posted racist and sexist tweets, including remarks about Grenfell Tower survivors, which was a horrific tower inferno that took many lives of many people with black and brown skin. So I'll just leave that with you. If you want to look up the Grenfell Tower fire, Google it. There's an awful lot about it. That's GRENFELL in London, and it was horrific, absolutely horrific. It was really, really horrible, Nero. What else did he do? Oh, he made jokes referencing the Ku Klux Klan, because of course you do. And he made posts mocking Formula One motor racing's decision to scrap the grid girls. You know, the girls in the tiny skirts and the tight tops holding up the grid numbers. He commented that the board should have said, "My legs are open for refugees." Oh, what a peach. What a prize. It was really traumatizing, Neuro. Yeah, these people are absolute scum. This is what reform councils actually look like. Not the leaflet you get through the door, not the promises about fixing potholes with JCB machines donated by billionaires who are under HMRC investigation. The reality. Cancelled meetings, closed learning centres, racist on social media, and teenagers running health budgets. That's what you're being asked to vote for. So, give it some thought and then vote for anybody else. There's just one more thing I want to say before I close, because it matters to understanding how we got here. And as usual, I am going to blame the media because it's their fucking fault. Do you see? QED. How did a party with no MPs for most of its existence, a party with consistent criminal and racist scandals, a party that the BBC itself briefly called far right before apologising, became the most prominent opposition force in British politics today? Part of the answer is yes, it's the mainstream media. And specifically, I want to point the finger at you, BBC Question Time. Analysis of the programme, which is supposed to be a political panel who answer questions from a cross-section of the British public. It's great, it's wonderful, or at least it used to be, because I've been in that audience. I've asked a question. I didn't get a question on air, but I don't like to put myself forward in front of the cameras, so it was fine. Anyway, so that's BBC Question Time. Analysis of the programme over 9 years by Cardiff University's School of Journalism found that Nigel Farage-led parties, UKIP, Brexit Party, Reform UK, peaked at 16 appearances in a single season in 2015 to 2016. Earlier research by the HuffPost found that between 2010 and 2017, UKIP appeared on almost 1 in 4 BBC Question Time programmes. 24% of all shows, despite never having more than 2 MPs at any time. The Green Party, which has had an MP consistently since 2010, appeared in just 7% of shows in the same period. UKIP, etc., 24% of Question Time shows. The Greens, with an actual MP, 7%. 1 in 4 versus 1 in 14. Farage's party with no MPs, 1 in 4. The Greens, with 2 MPs across the board, 1 in 14. The BBC have been platforming this movement, amplifying the movement, treating it as a legitimate major political force for 25 years. They helped build this. That is not nothing. That is a receipt too. And so here we are, days away from a local election with a party that was born from a woman whose racist tweets lasted longer than her leadership, that produced a Russian spy sentenced to 10.5 years in prison, that knew its own MP had a conviction for assaulting women and said nothing, that takes millions from a Thailand-based billionaire and puts JCB adverts on its election leaflets, whose leader lied about buying a house in the constituency he barely visits while earning £1 million in second jobs, who promoted a Canadian neo-Nazi group on Cameo for £141, and who brought a woman convicted of inciting arson attacks on asylum seekers onto their conference stage and called her Britain's favourite political prisoner. And they will win seats this week, maybe a lot of seats, because people are angry, genuinely, legitimately angry about the cost of living. Member of Parliament, yes, Laura. About public services, about feeling unheard. And that anger is real and it is very valid. But reform is not the answer to that anger, and I hope I've managed to explain why tonight. Reform is just a vehicle for Nigel Farage's ambitions, financed by billionaires, staffed by incompetents and in some cases criminals, and structured so that nobody, not you, not your councillor, not even their own MPs, can hold the man at the top accountable. Sound like anything you know, my American friends? We may have little voices, but we bring the big receipts. So please share this episode if you know any British people who are likely to be voting this week, because this could end very badly, as you, my dear American friends, know only too well. In closing, therefore, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight, for trusting me with your time. It genuinely means the world to me. If a closing prayer is not your thing spiritually, then I will send you on your way with all my love and see you back here next time, Tuesday, with our special guest, fingers crossed, Mr. Glenn Kirshner, for a little bit of justice that really matters. For those of you who'd like to stay, I'm going to ask you to take a moment to connect with your higher power, your spiritual guide, the force that helps you guide your way through the universe, and just take a moment of calm. If this episode was useful to you, please subscribe, like, and share. It matters enormously for little independent shows like this one. And all receipts and show notes will be up on Substack for our paid subscribers, because we have to give them a little bit of something for their money. And I want to, because that's a nice thing to do. So, if you're ready, higher power, whatever name you give to the force of goodness and justice in the universe, we come tonight with heavy hearts and clear eyes. We've looked at uncomfortable things and named them. Give us the courage to keep doing that, whatever side of the pond we are. Give us the wisdom to know the difference between anger that burns things down and anger that builds something better. Protect the vulnerable, strengthen the voices of the small, and remind us all, always, that democracy is not a spectator sport. In Jesus' name, Amen. Thank you, everybody. See you Tuesday if you can. Otherwise, see you back here some other time. I've been Mama, and I very much look forward to the next time that we're all together. But for tonight, the cafe, I'm afraid, is now closed. Good night.